Buying camo stuff, big lifted trucks. All we do in the south is hunt for that buck. Never get this stuck, so you better have a truck. Messing with me will leave you covered in mud. Country boy swagger, boots on my attire. Everybody hating, but I ain't really minding. It's awesome, my truck can't leave you blinded. Let me show you how it's done, just get behind me.
Starting the day off taking the tire off of my Eco Diesel. As you can see, I got two different rims, and that's going to lead us into a story, and I'm also going to give you guys some tips and tricks on tires, tread depth, if you need to get new tires. As you can see, it's about time for this one, right? Look at how thin it is right there. But we'll talk about tires today and just general safety rules regarding when to change them, how to change them if you get a flat. And since we're talking about this from the standpoint of someone that doesn't know how to change a tire at all, I decided I wanted to take a step back and talk about jacking your car up and where you should place the jack. So when you get under here, under your vehicle, you'll see like there's lots of different metal places, right? But you don't want to put a jack on just anything. What you're looking for, as you can see where I've placed my jack here, is a metal surface that is even across for your jack to sit in. One, because you don't want your jack to fall while you're doing something to your car, and two, because you don't want to mess up any of your frame. So like if I'd put the jack here where it doesn't go, I'd end up bending this, right? Like the jack's gonna bend this because I have the weight of the vehicle coming down on it. You want your jack to be on a flat, even surface. And typically when you go under a car, near each of the wheels, you will see a surface that looks like it is meant for a jack to go. So the first thing you want to do is find that, place your jack under it, and slowly raise your jack up until you have contact with that surface, and then continue to raise your jack up until your tire has left the ground. But do not do that before you have loosened the lug nuts on whatever tire it is you are trying to take off. Loosen your lug nuts first, because more often than not, you're not going to have an impact in your vehicle if you already don't know how to change a tire. So loosen your lug nuts a little bit, each one of them. Then find the place you need to put your jack. Place your jack under it. Slowly raise your jack. Raise your jack until the wheel's off the ground, and then go back to your tire and completely remove your lug nuts before you pull the tire off. I'm out here by myself, so I'm using my GoPro, and let's start off with you've got a flat and you need to take the tire off. First and foremost, as you can see, I have aftermarket rims on pretty much all my vehicles, and what that means is you can't just use the wrench that will come with your flat tire kit in your car, hopefully. And you also, more often than not, can't just use the jack that comes in your car, unfortunately for me anyway, because my vehicle's lifted, right? So first and foremost, if you have aftermarket rims on your car, more often than not, you have a lock key for your lug nuts. And what that means is you need to find the piece that belongs to the lug nuts that go into your rim before you attempt to remove them, right? And then in addition to that, you have to find the socket, right? So for me, it's a 21. I'm gonna try to twist it so you can see it's 21 millimeter. You have to find the socket that fits on the key. Now, when you remove rims from a vehicle, you don't have to go in a pattern, but when you put rims or tires back on a vehicle, you do. So I'm gonna remove this, and then I'm going to get the correct tire out, and we're going to put that on, and I'll talk about it as I do that, okay? What I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna lift my jack stand up one more, and I'm just gonna grab it, lift it up a little bit, and it's off. So that's that part. Like it's honestly, the tire coming off isn't that difficult, but putting the tire on, you have to be a little more careful, and so I'm going to actually record that entire process for you guys. I definitely scraped the mess out of my rim, but we've got our tire, and what we're going to do here is we are going to, this is how I do it. I pull my legs up and I sit the tire in between my legs, because tires are heavy, especially the bigger they are, and the better your rim, sometimes the heavier it is. But I'm going to lift it up and I'm going to place it on one of the lugs or one of the, until I get all of them on there. This tire doesn't really move too much, but what I always like to do, and this is what you do regardless, I have to take my key once again, but I take my key and I tighten by hand each of the lugs until basically I can't anymore. So at this point I'm gonna stop. But you see how if I push this rim back, it'll move. I can continue to tighten it, and I'm going to do it until I can't. When you are putting your lugs on your tire, you always want to go in a star pattern. So I always go doot, 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 right? The reason you're doing this is because you don't want to mount your tire unevenly and end up breaking off your lugs and your tire, you know, rolling down the highway next to you. So once again, I'm gonna repeat the process. You see I just pushed the tire in so I could get it to go down more. Then we're gonna go to our next one, and I'm drawing the star so you guys can see how I'm deciding where I want to go, right? And as you can see now, like, I can move the rim a little bit, and that's just because I haven't, right? But you see how it moves a different direction every time I tighten one. Once again, sorry, doot, 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 right? So we're gonna tighten this one. And then we're gonna beat our last one, tighten it. And once again, you possibly will not have all the equipment that I do, but if you have rims, you're going to have a key. So this is something you're going to have to do, especially if you can't get your hand on the bolts like I can't with this rim, right? And so now I'm using an impact, which you might not have, but basically I'm just going to tighten them all the way up, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You always want to go in that star pattern when you're tightening your tire back onto your spindle. So make sure you do the star pattern. If you don't, it's quite possible you'll be driving down the highway and you'll stop and your tire will keep going. And I'm not talking about spinners. So now let's talk about tread, because I think that's another important discussion to have. Just so you know, since we're talking about tire safety in general, this tire right here is a used tire. These tread patterns, as you can see, I still have quite a bit of tread depth in here. I stick my finger in there, I still have some tread depth. And when I go to my off-road tires, what you'll see is they're actually thick as well. Now, some of your car tires don't have nearly as much tread on them, and the pattern isn't nearly as aggressive. But what I wanted to show you guys is this tire, because I know this tire needs I know this rim needs new tires soon, right? So there's some things you can look for. You can look for if the pattern started to disappear. That's an indication that you probably either have uneven tire wear or you need new tires. And so what you see here when we're looking at this tire is you see that both sides of the tread, or on both sides the tread, is fairly similar. And then as we go to the middle, it is as well. But then when we get to the very middle, we can see that it's wore out just a little bit more, so it's not bad. But you'll wear the middle of your tire out faster if you overinflate your tire, because the air is going to sit right here and you're not going to be on the outside. And if you underinflate your tire, you'll wear the outside out faster. This tire actually wore pretty evenly, and it looks like this tire has been patched at some point. Might not have been, but it's possible that this tire was. I can't remember. So that's what you want to look for first and foremost. That's a good indication anyway. And then we want to talk about tread depth. And I'm not sure how well you guys can see it, but these tires don't really have any tread depth. And when we talk about depth of tread, the reason that matters is because if you're driving in the summer, you know, whatever, it's not nearly as bad. But let's say you're driving and it starts raining, you don't have any tread, your tire is not going to let the water go into it. Your tire is going to sit on the water, and that's how people hydroplane. That's one of the reasons people hydroplane, right? It's either that or the water surface is so high it hits the bottom of the car, causing their car to float temporarily and they lose control. But you want to make sure that you have good tread depth. If your tread is starting to get really, really low, it's an indication that you need to change your tire. And the ultimate indication that you need to change your tire is you start to see any, like if you see metal at any point on this part of the tire, you need to change your tire. Also, if you see cracking on the outside of your tire, let me show you an example of that. Now this is an extremely old tire, but this tire looks good, right? If you look at it like that, we deflated the tire, and as you can see, it's cracking. This tire is dry rotted. So if you start to see cracking on your tire, your vehicle's probably sat too long and you need to remove it as well. Now, with what you have when you get a flat tire, you're probably not going to have a jack. But if you do, for whatever reason, just make sure no one's around the vehicle as you're letting it down, one. And two, sorry, I had to close that so I could do this. Let it down slowly. So I've sat my car down, and now I'm letting my jack stand completely down, and we're good. Now let's talk about the location of the flat tire you get and what you should do when you're on the side of the road. If you get a flat tire, first and foremost, you should inspect it and see if it's still on your rim. If your tire is still on your rim, then you can safely, and I'm not saying drive 20 miles, a few hundred feet, you can safely drive very, very slowly. But if at any point the tire isn't in contact with every part of your rim, do not drive your vehicle whatsoever. One, you will mess up the rim. Two, you will definitely mess up the tire, and any chance you have of getting it patched is going to basically at that point be eradicated. What you should do is you want the tire that is flat, and this is my opinion. I'm actually going to, after I say this, I'm going to go research it and see what, you know, safety and highway, or I'll call the sheriff's office or the stop. Now when it comes to how you want your car on the side of the highway, and I'm going to call the highway patrol after this to see what they say, and hopefully it correlates with what I say, and if not, I'll put a correction in. But in my opinion, you want the tire that you are changing to be away from vehicles traveling on the highway. So for me, this tire is the tire that went flat, and it's on my driver's side of my vehicle. I pulled up on the shoulder on the left. And the reason I'm on the left shoulder is because if a car comes flying by and they hit my car, at least I am away from one, traffic, and two, I'm on the side of the road and less likely, if my car gets hit, to be hit as well. Now, with that being said, if you're on the right side of the car, the passenger side, you want to pull to the passenger side or the right side of the highway. And the thing for me is just be conscious of a guardrail, because I'm not sure if you guys remember, there was a Cleveland Browns player who was driving in the snow a few years ago, and his wife, they got a flat tire or something. His wife got out of the vehicle, and a drunk driver came by and pinned her in between the vehicle and the guardrail on the side of the highway. So be conscious of guardrails. If you can't really make it past one, or if there's nowhere to pull off where there isn't a guardrail, that's your only option. Just make sure you have a safe amount of space between you and the guardrail, and try to change your tire as quickly as possible. But also, if you can pull over on the side of the highway where there isn't a guardrail, that's better, because the more space you have, the more ability you have to move if something does happen where you need to move very quickly. I'm going to check and make sure that that all is correct. But I did want to show you guys that, and then I'll stop the video now and I'll bring up some images of tires and show you what can and what can't be patched. Patching a tire isn't something that I really recommend, but at the same time, I've done it, and typically the reason I've done it is because I'll have a brand new tire and and I'll run over a nail, and I'll be like, yeah, there's no way I'm gonna go spend $275 on a tire. I'm just gonna patch it. And I mean, it works well if you do it right, and it'll last the entire tire life if you do it right. Just make sure that you either do it correctly or have a trained professional do it for you. And always understand that if you go in and they tell you they can't patch your tire, it's very possible that they are telling the truth. Sorry about my dogs in the background. Hey guys, hey, we're recording here. We're recording.